Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Justice Talk, our first Justice Talk actually for autumn 2025. It's a pleasure to see so many of you here. My name is Dr. Anthea Vogel, for those of you whom I haven't met yet. I'm an Associate Professor here at the faculty, but I'm also the Faculty Co-Director of the Brennan Justice Program. I'm emceeing today's event alongside the wonderful Chloe Ferreira, who many of you will know and is one of your student co-directors of the Brennan Justice Program, along with Maya and Granot. It's really wonderful to see so many of you here today and to be joined by our exceptional panel. I feel kind of a safe distance away from them at this point. We're really, really grateful to the panel for making time to be here and generously participating in the Brennan Justice Program, and welcoming one of our final panel members, Katie Green, who I'll introduce in a moment. You have a seat warmed for you, Katie, so not a problem. Before we kind of launch into official events, I wanted to acknowledge that the UTS Law Faculty is situated on unceded lands of the people. We pay our respect to elders both past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians for this land. We acknowledge that these lands have always been places of law and today exist within plural legal worlds. Some of you may have heard in that acknowledgement, which is formulated by the UTS Black Caucus, the Indigenous Strategy Committee and Jumbunna for the faculty specifically, that it recognises that sovereignty over this land and over law, the place where we are, has never been ceded. I think that fact is always important. I think it's particularly important for those of us who work with what we might think of as the dominant legal system. So the laws that we learn in class and we talk about and we profess exist in a legal pluralist way. And when we think about justice and injustice, I think it's great to reflect on the ways in which law is implicated in both positive and negative ways for Indigenous justice. And so it's really fitting today that our panel is on social justice lawyering, work and volunteering. And our panel represents really diverse organisations involved in both legal and non-legal initiatives, all of which are devoted to social justice. Our panel is here today because they are wonderful and valued partners of the Brennan Justice Program and have been spaces where a lot of you, students, have gone to volunteer to make a really fabulous contribution to social justice initiatives via the organisations and via their kind of leadership in the particular spaces in which they work. The panel brings together speakers who have committed their careers or time to broader social justice initiatives. And the reason we're here today is really to give you a chance to learn about this work and to start to think about how you might get involved if that's something you want to do, how these organisations might fit into your thinking about career, or indeed pro bono aspects of your career if you don't end up working directly in a social justice organisation. I think today's panel is especially kind of unique because not only are you hearing from, I guess, leaders in the social justice space, but you're hearing from your peers, for Brennan Justice students who have volunteered as part of the program, to understand how they got involved in volunteering, what it's meant to them, the impact that it's had, and to kind of connect you with those volunteering opportunities if that's something you'd like to do. I'm not going to share everyone's bio in detail because that's actually our panel's job today. I'm not going to steal the thunder, but I will briefly introduce our panel members. And if you just, I can probably do it in order here. So on the right, to the right of me is Katie Green. Katie is the CEO of the Inner City Legal Centre. The ICLC provides an award-winning New South Wales LGBTQIA+ legal service in addition to generalist legal assistance for inner city residents experiencing legal disadvantage. Katie has an amazing career profile before that point, which no doubt they'll share with you in a moment. To the left of me here, we have Yashvanti Murugan. Yashvanti is a third-year LLB and Bachelor of Information Technology student at UTS and has volunteered with the Australian Pro Bono Centre. And so then we have Gabrielle Christian Hare, who is indeed the CEO of the Australian Pro Bono Centre. The centre is Australia's national centre of leadership for pro bono services. The centre activates lawyers to provide pro bono support and equips them with a wide range of tools and resources to support their involvement. Next to Gabriella, we have Phoebe, who is the founder and CEO of Inspire Tomorrow Education. Phoebe is the youth advisor and board director advocating for educational equity, civic engagement and gender equality. And next to Phoebe, last but not least, we have Ruby Coe. Ruby is a third-year law student here at UTS and a Bachelor of Arts in International Studies student. Ruby volunteers with Inspire Tomorrow Education as their Education Operations Director. Ruby is also a legal case manager at the Federal Court of Australia. In terms of how the panel will run, after each of the speakers briefly introduce themselves and the work that they do and give you a bit of insight into their career, we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A, so an opportunity for you to ask questions about the work that they do, how you might get involved, and to understand kind of the social justice implications of their organisations and their volunteering. Once formalities wrap up, there will be some afternoon tea, which all of you have probably already seen and some of you have maybe already snacked on. I really invite everyone to stick around, come up and chat to our panellists who are able to stay, enjoy the refreshments and have a chance to talk to each other about potentially working in this space. Last but not least, a wonderful Ruby DeGao will be keeping time for the panel today and keeping us all in line so that there's plenty of time for Q&A after the panel finishes. And so with that, we thought we're pairing the organisations that are here with their student volunteers. But maybe, Katie, we might have you first. We have student volunteers for some, but not all of our panel. But Katie's and ICLC are great partners of the Brennan Justice Program, so we might start here and then move down.
Lovely.
Okay.
I was going to ask, do I need to move the furniture, or is this intentional?
I think we're showcasing our banners.
Okay, I'm happy to stay here.
And yeah. We're just remembering the happy times of social distancing, maybe.
Yeah, I'll stay. But yes, hello, friends.
Go on.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here today. It's such an honour to meet you all, and I suppose because we're all lawyers in the room or aspiring lawyers, I wanted to talk about my journey because it was very, very non-linear. I'm one of the rare people in the legal profession that actually have lived experience of homelessness and didn't actually finish high school. So the way I kind of came to my career was slow, and I actually qualified, I think, as a lawyer when I was about 32, so much older. So I didn't finish high school. The queer young person in particular, the regional area of New South Wales where I lived wasn't a particularly safe space for me. So I ran away from home and moved to the city and fell in with the wonderful, fabulous queer community of the late 1990s. And then slowly, and had lots of lived experience during that time of, I suppose, surviving as a homeless young person in the inner city. So it was a lot of fun, but there was also a lot of hardship involved in that. And through that experience, I got involved in lots of youth advocacy and youth homelessness organisations. So started to build my career, and my first career was actually in kind of community casework type role. And I worked in a lot of youth homelessness organisations and youth refuges. And while doing that, commenced studies, first a Bachelor of Arts, which I did during the day while working in youth refuges by night. And so I had this amazing career all through my 20s and early 30s, working in social justice organisations directly with people. So homelessness organisations, the Red Cross, I did a lot of work with asylum seekers. And I think through that kind of work, I became somewhat frustrated and jaded by seeing people always in the same situation and supporting people where they were at. But I was like, I actually want to do something to support people to drive change. So I went back to school and did a law degree. And instantly, and one of the things that I wanted to do, which is funny, I always laugh about this, I was like, kind of want to get a job where I make a little bit more money than you make working in this, and instantly found myself on the other side of a law degree, only working in community legal centres. So that was an interesting life choice that I made for myself. It's such exceptionally rewarding work. So as soon as I finished my law degree, I started work first at Marrickville Legal Centre, where I was the youth solicitor for 5 years. Briefly went to the Bar Association, where I coordinated the pro bono program there. And about 2 years ago, the opportunity came up to lead the ICLC. And as somebody from the community that the ICLC serves right across New South Wales, I had to jump at it. It's honestly the best job I've ever had in my entire life. I love it so much, particularly because our clients today are by and large people in the trans community, and we do lots and lots of anti-discrimination type work supporting trans people who experience discrimination at work, in the legal system, have all sorts of criminal justice issues. And we also have a really niche service, the sex worker legal service, where we are supporting sex workers who experience sexual assault at work, and it's a lawful job in New South Wales. It has been since 1995. So supporting sex workers with WHS issues and also recouping payments when their clients rip them off. So it's such incredible wonderful work, and it's a real connection for me from when I was a young person now to being able to support the community. So I love it.
Thank you so much, Katie. And we'll have a chance, I think, for the many questions that will arise. And maybe next we'll have Gabriella and then Yasvanti. Right, thanks, Gabriella.
Hi, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here, and thanks so much to the faculty for the invitation. So I did my undergraduate law degree at the University of Sydney, and the Australian Pro Bono Centre is actually based at UNSW in the faculty there. So it's a rare occasion that I would step into UTS. So very, very pleased to be here. Because we're based at UNSW, we often have interns coming to us from the faculty there, but we're so happy to have this new arrangement with UTS for the Brennan program, and Yash has been our first intern, which has been a fabulous experience for us. So I'll talk a little bit about what the centre does in a moment, but just to give you sort of a little bit of background to my career trajectory. So like Katie, I've had a very long, non-linear experience. But also I think the experience that I've had is shows that it is possible to actually start your law career in a very commercial way and actually draw in social justice into that world, or in fact pivot entirely from commercial work to social justice work. So I started off in one of the largest law firms in Sydney, first as a paralegal while I was studying, and then as a graduate. I then went and joined one of the big firms in London. I was doing mergers and acquisitions and other sort of corporate finance work. And I had 2.5 years working for that firm in Tokyo, also with a very corporate finance bent. And then went back to London, and I joined a big investment bank, and I was in-house counsel with them for about 3.5 years. So very, very commercial focus. But the whole time I had this sort of this real desire to be involved in something that was very much social justice and human rights focused. So I think looking back, I had a fantastic experience in the commercial world, and I built up so many legal skills through that experience. But I just had this overwhelming hankering to be focusing those skills in a really different context. So I went to Damascus, and I put up my hand to work pro bono for UNHCR. And this was during the time when there was the Iraqi refugee crisis. And within a week of doing that, I just knew that I was in the right place, and that I really wanted to focus on human rights and social justice going forward. And so they ended up offering me a paid job, and I ended up staying there for a while. And then I went to Jerusalem, and I was very lucky to get a position as special advisor to head of mission, working for the Office of the Quartet Representative, which used to be led by Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister. And there was a wonderful team there full of international experts and Palestinian advisors and Israeli advisors, and with the centre there set up to support Palestinian institution building and economic viability. So I did that for a while, which was fantastic. And then I ended up being on maternity leave then for a while. And bizarrely, I was invited. This was also during a time when I was having some more international moves, and I ended up with my family in Turkey for a while. I was asked to join a film financing partnership. So this is something I could do while I had two very, very small children, and I was very much using my legal skills once again in a different context. And it was a great thing to do while I had two very small children. But then with coming back to Australia, I was very keen to get back into the human rights and social justice world, and the opportunity came up to be at the head of policy and strategy at the centre. So I did that for 2 years, and then moved into the role of CEO. At the centre, we are very much focused on supporting lawyers across the profession to be involved in pro bono legal work. You might be surprised to know that Australian lawyers do the second highest number of pro bono hours of any legal cohort in the world, after lawyers in the United States. So the pro bono sector here is very mature, very established, and it is, as I was saying, very possible to have a commercial career, in fact, and do pro bono work on the side. I realise I'm running out of time, so I might stop there. But during the Q&A, I'd be really pleased to talk to you about, how you can get involved in the pro bono world.
Thanks, Gabriella. Next we have Phoebe. Thanks, Phoebe.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. It's such an honour to get to meet so many fellow law students as well. So my name's Phoebe. I'm a third-year arts law student at the University of Sydney, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Inspire Tomorrow Education. What we do at Inspire Tomorrow Education is we're a youth-led, not-for-profit organisation that is dedicated to breaking down the barriers to higher education. We focus on empowering students who are in high school who are experiencing any form of disadvantage by providing them with tutoring, mentorship and scholarship support to improve university admissions from disadvantaged cohorts. In terms of the main thing that we do run a tutoring program, and we've had so much incredible success working with students at UTS. What we do in this tutoring program is we pair up high achieving university students or people who are high achievers in high school with a student who may be experiencing a barrier to education all across New South Wales. So as a tutor in this role, you can dedicate up to 1 hour a week or 1 hour a fortnight working with, mentoring and learning with a student who may be Indigenous, may be in public housing, they may be experiencing any form of disability. Students from all backgrounds participate in this program. We've had such incredible success in terms of beautiful relationships between, law students who are, about to go on and do incredible things in their career, and also give back to students who may be wanting to follow in the exact same footsteps as you. I think one of the most special things about this program, I'm sure Ruby will be able to attest to this as well, is not only we receive beautiful feedback when we create these lovely pairings between the two students, but also we really do notice that students, after they meet their volunteer tutor, are more likely to pursue higher education. That is something that we focus on in our organisation, is not just improving the grades of students to help them access university, but also the desire for social mobility and aspiration for higher education. I'm very proud to say that in 2024, 100% of the students that participated in our program said they would be more likely to go to university after meeting their tutor and after working with their tutor. I think that's a really good example of the incredible tangible impact that you can have as a volunteer tutor in a manner that is exceptionally low effort. We try our very best at our organisation to make sure that your schedule when you're working with us and volunteering is suited to your needs. We're both students ourselves, so we know exactly what it's like to manage a university workload, but also fulfill that desire that you may have to give back to communities who are experiencing disadvantage, and also make sure that your future university cohorts are representative of what Australia looks like. A little bit about why I started this organisation. When I was starting my first law lecture, we had a room of about 400 people, and we had a very esteemed High Court Justice come and speak to our cohort. And this High Court Justice is a huge advocate for public education. And in a room of about 400 people, he asked everyone in this room to raise their hand if they went to a public school. And in this room, 400 people, there are about 12 hands that went up. That was a statistic that absolutely shocked me. I grew up in a regional area. I am first in family to go to university, but to look around this cohort, knowing that all of us are going to be people who will be in positions of power, we are the future change makers and the decision makers. The fact that that room and that degree is not reflective of the true diversity of what Australia looks like is a huge issue. And we know the statistics surrounding educational equity and how valuable education is as a tool for social mobility and for creating change in our society. And I really, really did believe that when I looked around this room, I know so many incredible smart law students who have so much to give. And I thought to myself, if I could pair them up with someone who maybe wants to follow in their footsteps and has the potential and the capacity to go on and create change, imagine what kind of incredible things we could do by facilitating that level of knowledge sharing. So that's, I guess, the reason why Inspire Tomorrow Education came about. At the moment, we're a thriving team of nearly 90 volunteers. We operate all across Australia, and our main tutoring program is in New South Wales. We work with a bunch of incredible schools and incredible partner organisations to make this reality happen. And we have been able to help around 65 students on their journey to university so far, many of whom I'm sure will go on to do absolutely wonderful things. Another thing that we're doing at our organisation this year is also launching the Scholarships and Careers Mentoring Program. One of the big things we've noticed as an organisation is that a lot of people need financial aid to be able to get the most out of tertiary education. And there are many people at university who have been successful recipients of a scholarship. What we do in this program is we pair you up with a student who typically will be a refugee, a recently arrived migrant, someone from an Indigenous background, and helping them apply for a scholarship. It's up to 4 hours a month, so very, very low effort and relatively low commitment. And in these kinds of sessions, you sit down with a student, you talk about your own journey to university, what you're doing at university, but you also sit down and help students write, find, and apply for scholarships. And this program is going to be able to help so many kids access the transformative funding they need to be able to get the most out of their degree and actually begin to pursue a career pathway that they really align with. And in these sessions as well, there's a wonderful opportunity again for you to step up and be a role model and a mentor to a lot of these students. I think, again, another really special part about our organisation is you very well could be the first person that these students have ever met. You might be the first person who has graduated high school or graduated or attended university or is graduating from university. And that's something that is incredibly rewarding, I think, to be a role model for someone. We really do believe at our organisation that you can't be what you can't see. And I think we've had so much incredible success by facilitating these kinds of human connections and pairings to make sure that the next generation as well is able to go on and become incredible change makers in their community. So that's a little bit about us, but yeah, I think I'll wrap up there.
Thanks so much, Phoebe. So many great themes across the panel and such inspiring presentations already. We'll now move to the volunteers for some of the organisations that we've heard from. So Yashvanti, invite you to speak about your experience of volunteering with Gabriella and the Australian Pro Bono Centre.
Hello, I'm Yashvanti Morgan. I'm a third year law and IT student doing Bachelor of Law and IT. Sorry if I sound nervous. I am nervous and I'm not as eloquent as my members. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But basically, I found this opportunity through Outlook. So if you're in the Brennan program, I actually highly recommend that you go through your Outlook every single day because there will be opportunities no matter what you do on our app, and we'll get emails no matter what happens. So I recommend you go through Outlook and you look at your emails because that's what I did, and that's how I knew that they were actually looking for interns. And I wanted to be a lawyer because I really wanted to go into that social justice space. I watched a bunch of movies in my year 12, and then I was like, I have to do this because this looks so cool. And I really wanted to help those people who just didn't have access to the law system. So when I saw Bono Centre's opportunity, I was like, I have to do this. So I applied to for the internship. And yeah, it's just because I was motivated to do social justice. The task that I did, I helped out with researching government policies and legal frameworks. I helped draft and develop articles that advocated for pro bono. I also helped found volunteer opportunities for for lawyers, for PLT students, and for young lawyers. And we basically put them all onto this website called Social Justice Opportunities. So if you're a law student who's in your final year, or you're looking for PLT opportunities, or you want to be in social justice, I highly suggest that you go onto this website for more opportunities and go from there because they have some really good opportunities on that website. I also helped with curating a list of companies who would be willing to do the pro bono survey, I believe. And that actually helped the center understand how companies need better policies to support them and how they need more support in order to effectively pro bono practices. I think the biggest thing that I did, the most highlighted work that I did during my internship or my volunteer role, was that I actually helped create a list of recommendations on how to improve the social justice opportunity website, on how to make it more marketable. I was actually combining my experience as a Bachelor of Information and Technology student in order to help with the Pro Bono Center. And I found that really important because I realized that there was this space where technology and social justice can effectively merge together and create more avenues for those people who are poor, who are vulnerable, or who are disadvantaged to access the legal system. And I find that my experience as a volunteer actually just opened my eyes to the social justice system. It's not just about going and talking with clients as well. It's also helping lawyers. It's also figuring out policies that can actually help advocate for pro bono. And that itself was so important to me as a second year student because I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. But then going into this volunteer space, it actually helped me think about these different opportunities and these different avenues to actually help people, which I think was very important to me. But yeah, thank you so much for having me there as an intern. Amazing experience, guys. The team was full of women and it was like so good. The work culture was amazing. And yeah, that's all I have.
We're a little bit more diverse. We have one man.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you so much. Yes, Vanti. I have 100 questions floating across my mind, so we'll have time for them soon. But last but not least, over to Ruby to speak about her volunteer experience.
So I currently volunteer as the Education Operations Director at ITE, and I was very lucky. Phoebe and I actually went to the same school, and we come from the same area. So when she sort of posted on her socials and her LinkedIn that she was looking at reaching out for people in her network to come aboard and help, I guess, kickstart this program at this company, I was very delighted to put my hand up, apply. Tutoring and I guess teaching has always been a big part of my life. I've been tutoring since I was in high school, primary school students. I've been teaching dance and Pilates since I was in high school as well. So that's always been a big part of my life. And as I was wrapping up my HSC, pursuing a career in education and as a teacher was something that I was highly considering until I sort of made the very last minute switch to go into law, because I guess my passion for advocacy kind of trumped that a little bit. But even still then, since I've started university, I've continued to tutor both for companies and also for myself through people that I know and recommendations that I take. And I sort of took on that opportunity to become the Education Operations Director because I have seen and I've heard just how, I guess, tutoring and the private tutoring sector in New South Wales especially has become not only saturated, but has almost become, I guess, a necessity that if you are able to get this extra help and this extra tuition, that's almost like a guarantee that you'll do well in HSC and that you'll be able to access a wide range of choices for university and your tertiary education. And for that to be, I guess, a huge financial barrier that a lot of people who are facing disadvantage can't access, that was didn't quite sit well with me either. So I guess Phoebe and I are coming from very similar veins in terms of why we're passionate about this area. And so as Education Operations Director, I've been very privileged to have the opportunity to shape the direction and the processes of the tutoring team and our tutoring program. So I get the opportunity to, I guess, develop our processes. So in terms of how we pair students, in terms of reaching out to different schools and university societies and companies to expand the pool of where we're getting our volunteer tutors from, to collaborate with our tutoring officers who sort of help with the admin and the running of that program, to think about how we can grow, whether that be interstate or also whether that be in terms of how we're helping not only our students but also our tutors as well. And so I think when we were able to collaborate with the Brennan Society last year, that was really special. And I think everyone in our tutoring team was overwhelmed by the number of applications and responses we got from Brennan program students. And we've had such wonderful feedback from not only the Brennan program students who volunteer with us as tutors, but also the students who've been paired with them. Because as Phoebe mentioned, you can't be what you can't see. And it's really that visibility and breaking down the unknown of what university can look like that I guess motivates and really helps these students, I guess, diminish their fears of the unknown and help them realize that tertiary education is a possible pathway for them and help them to pursue whatever it is that they want to pursue in their future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ruby. Let's give our panel a round of applause before we move. Such an energizing and inspiring set of experiences and a real crossover, I think, between the kinds of works and the kind of goals that each organisation is trying to achieve and that the volunteers are working towards. What we might do, I don't think we have overflow from the other room. We don't. Great. So we're all here in this room today. We actually had a backup overflow room because there was such immense interest in this panel and everything our speakers have to offer. We'll have a Q&A session. If you have a question, we might ask to introduce yourselves. And if you have a question for a particular panel member, just let them know. If it's more of a general question, then I just invite whoever on the panel would like to respond and feel like that means something to them to respond to the question that's being asked. And so we'll open it up to the floor for questions to the panel, either about the work that they're doing, their own career paths and parts of the work that they've mentioned, or anything else that's occurred to you all.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I'm second year law. I just had a question for all of you, like how often you have availabilities for volunteer work come up. If it's a frequent thing or once a year or it's like unlimited, and how we could get involved.
Thanks, Mackenzie.
Literally, I came from this. So yeah, volunteers, and I failed to do this in my 5 minutes. Volunteers are the absolute lifeblood of ICLC. Our volunteer to staff ratio is about 50-50 actually. So 50% volunteer, and it's a mix. Right from the stage you guys are at, up to lots of pro bono volunteering hours from law firms. And thanks to Gabriella's wonderful organisation for really embedding that stuff within law firm culture. So literally this morning, all of our phones are on in the morning, and the phones are responded to 100% by people in your cohort and supervised by a client intake supervisor. So we respond to walk-ins, phone calls, web forms, all of these people all over New South Wales trying to seek legal assistance, and it all is triage and talking to people, booking them in, assessing legal need, collecting documents. And it's really, because it is really law student powered, it's kind of feast to famine. So some shifts there'll be like 7 people show up and it's wild, but this morning the client intake supervisor was all by herself. So there's always opportunities. And I think you can come to us either via the program or directly. So yeah, come volunteer.
And is there kind of an open call for volunteers, Katie?
Yeah, we do intakes, but we tend to do about 3 intakes a year, and there's also on the job training depending on what. So I think if you were to put in an inquiry today, you might get a call fairly soon, because we do intake in dribs and drabs, and there's also training that happens across the year as well, on both legal issues and working with clients directly. So working with our client cohort in particular.
Oh, thanks. Down the panel, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we don't have any particular timing when it comes to taking on volunteers and interns. It very much just depends on whether we've got capacity to supervise at a particular time. We definitely don't take on nearly as many as Katie does, that's for sure, but we do have opportunities that come up from time to time.
We're very much the same. We assess applications on a rolling basis. So at any point, we are always looking for volunteers. Similar, I'm sure, for all of our organisations, we are 100% volunteer run. So the success of our program is solely contingent upon incredible people who are willing to come and give their time. Another good benefit of our program as well is that it's 100% online. And also we do train you in teaching and child safe organisation principles and things like that. But yeah, we're always looking for volunteer tutors.
Questions, yeah.
Jade, third-year law student. I think Phoebe already kind of answered this one, but for Gabrielle and Katie, how many hours would you expect your volunteers to be contributing?
Such a good question. And actually what I would say is don't make the commitment if you're not actually willing to put in the time. And this is I guess the dark side of volunteering, which I try not to talk about too much, but when you're working with a resource-strapped organisation, I would say there's probably, there's probably a good 2 to 3 days investment on our end to support volunteers to learn the job. And we do see quite a lot of drop off, which is quite disappointing for us. We accept it, we roll with it, we know that that's how it goes. Probably for the law student cohort, so that intake and client support work, someone left yesterday. We're going to post about it on our social media, but she's been with us 1 day a week for about a year. We're obviously on her CV, and she's just walked into her first sort of policy role as I think a bridging role between her legal qualification and her admission. So she's done really great, and she's, say, the optimum volunteer. So for that, I would think, yeah, about 1 day for a year would mean you're actually really making a contribution. And you're also really learning the role properly over that time.
Yeah. And is that in terms of those guidelines, would 1 day a week be something that ICLC is thinking about from volunteers.
Yeah, ideally, like we do half days because obviously we appreciate that law students have busy lives, and I mean to that point of privilege as well. Like often the people that want to volunteer the most actually are juggling studying and work if they have to support themselves. So we are really conscious of that. And one observation I think that I also would have is that a lot of people that come from the less privileged backgrounds tend to be able to give the most as well. So yeah, we try and tailor the program to what the person needs and to be flexible.
I would just kind of say and echo that questions of equity and privilege and who can give time and how difficult that is when our law students have to work and study at the same time. And our Brennan partners know one of the things that motivates the program is giving you all an opportunity sometimes if ICLC needs a one-off job or something that is a little bit more ad hoc for some students, for you to get volunteer experience if you don't have that capacity to make those kind of long-term commitments, or that you might have that capacity later on in your law degree, but you might want to get a little sense of what it's like. So that's that idea of there's a spectrum of ways to get involved, which is something that I think Gabriella was pointing up to. But yeah, Gabriella, the time commitment and scope.
Yeah, so we also think that one day a week works really well. We also are cognizant of all of the juggle, that's for sure. And so we have had volunteers do, say, 2 half days during the week before. But I would say working a whole day just allows you to sort of dive a bit more deeply into the activities that you're working on, but also just to get to know the staff within the organisation a bit better as well. I mean, we are very open to the number of weeks involved in volunteering. Often we would take a volunteer, for probably maximum a semester. At UNSW, that's a trimester, so it's a little bit shorter. But that's more or less how we work.
And Phoebe, was there anything you wanted to add around some of your descriptions around volunteering?
I mean, simply put, for our tutoring program, as you know, it's maximum. Typically, we do ask people if they are interested to do more than 1 hour a week, but the minimum is 1 hour a fortnight. We are both law students. We both work. We both study. We know how hard it is to manage everything. And I know when, I was kind of beginning my degree, I was someone that really did want to give back, but I did not have a lot of time, in all honesty. And I think we've intentionally set up our program to make sure that law students feel like they can work one-on-one and really see a tangible impact and the difference they're making in someone's life and have that really personal connection. So yeah, we would say it would be minimum 1 hour a fortnight, 1 hour a week if you're interested. And yeah, it's 100% all online and designed to work for you. You also pick the tutoring hour that you do. You work directly with the student to schedule the hour exactly around whatever you want to do. So this could be mornings, weekends, evenings, whatever works. The whole program is designed to work for both people. So we do really think it's very flexible.
And I might just direct part of that question to Yash and Ruby as well. If you had reflections on managing kind of volunteering alongside your work and study, or if there's anything kind of sparks for you in that sense of, what your volunteering load has been and what that's meant alongside all of your other responsibilities and day-to-day work.
Yes, definitely for both myself and also seeing how it plays out for the people who volunteer with us. I think speaking to my personal experience, it can be very difficult. I know for me personally, my commute is quite long, so trying to manage that whilst also working in person in the city, coming to classes, and managing IT on top of that, there are weeks where it's very hard. But I think the important thing is that you don't overcommit yourself to too many things as well. I think the more that you're passionate about something and the more that you pursue it, the more that you'll naturally give to it. And I think in terms of finding that balance, it's ensuring that you're volunteering with organizations that you're really passionate about and that you do want to give back. And when you do want to do that, you'll make time and space in your life with that as well. So I guess from that, my biggest thing is don't overcommit yourself, and to communicate as well with whoever is above you or whoever you report to when you're volunteering. If it's a really busy exam period or assignment season, if you communicate and let them know, my availability or my capacity is a little bit limited at the moment, but once maybe uni break starts, you can pick up some more time and some more tasks. I think communication and knowing your limits and your own capacity is really important in terms of managing and balancing all of that as well.
I think Ruby has said it really nicely. So that was most of what I was going to say. My advice as also a Brennan student who volunteers a lot, I'd suggest that you go small first if you're unsure if you can manage the workload or not. Like I'm pretty sure they like offer volunteer opportunities for like one day. We just help out like a team set up an event. And then if you can handle that, then I would suggest going into volunteering with like 3 months or like going with larger firms because ultimately you don't want to also disadvantage them at the same time and sabotage yourself and your education. So if you are unsure, I highly suggest going small first and then proceeding with larger commitments because that's what I did because I procrastinate a lot. So I don't know if I could do an intern role.
That wasn't obvious.
Oh yeah. When it comes to work, I don't procrastinate. But then like when it's like initially in my first year, I knew I procrastinated a lot. And so that's why I went small first. And then I was like, okay, I can actually handle this. Like I know what I'm doing. I can put a schedule down and I can actually do my work. And then I applied for the Pro Bono Center. But yeah.
Super. Thank you. Saw a lot of heads nodding at the procrastination. You're a lecturer. Okay. Other questions? Oh, so many. Maybe we might take 2 and then come to the panel and then take another round. So just in front of me here.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it would be quite different for Phoebe and Ruby, but how much, because I'm a first year, how much practical legal training or training and education do you need to volunteer?
Great question. And then just behind you.
I'm a first year student also, and I just wonder, like, what kind of character, like, you value most as an employee?
Right. So experience and character question. So we might come to our panel and then take some more questions.
I'm happy to jump in with that one. I think, in terms of experience, we really don't require any. As long as you received a band 5 or a band 6 as a minimum in the subject that you would like to teach, that is all we require. In terms of, the experience of our previous volunteer tutors, a lot of people have never tutored before. We provide you with all the resources we think you need in order to be empowered in the role and feel like you can make a difference and make an impact. So it is a little bit of learning on the job, but in terms of accessibility requirements, we do not require any previous experience. As long as you have a working with children check as well, and you also have your basics, that's basically all you need. In terms of the character element, I definitely do think we require someone who is passionate. I think I'm sure for many organizations, you need someone who is willing to commit to the cause. I think so many of our volunteer tutors have lived experience with educational equity, which really drives them in the role that they perform. But also in terms of, our working relationship with the tutors, we love to work with people who really believe in what we do. And we find that the people who really have that passion get the most out of our organization.
Yeah, I would say in terms of qualities, reliability, like and it's not just like across the board, kind of the, I think again, dark side when you're not paying someone, people show up to work because they're getting paid, whereas volunteers, various reasons and the life reasons that we were talking about can be less reliable, but that, punctuality and communicating, if not able to make a shift, is something that we really value. And it is we get ghosted. We find quite a lot, like more and more, just like people stop showing up and we like, are you okay? We want to make sure, and also that communication. So we know if we can provide a better experience for people is really important. And on qualifications, I would say for most people, if they've made it to university, then they're qualified to pick up the phone and assist us with our assessing clients. But actually on that, another thing that I've observed is, a minimum, like the confidence to use phones and also to talk to people. There's something that I've observed when people step into it. And I remember this because I also did my law degree at UNSW, and because I already had heaps of experience working with clients, when I came to do my practical, my first volunteer shift at Kingsford Legal Centre, like someone next to me actually had a panic attack and passed out. And I was like, oh my God, it's just about talking to a person. But because it was a client in a legal centre context, that all of a sudden became terrifying. So I think the confidence to be able to talk to people, the confidence to be able to use the phone, that's another really weird one that I've observed. That's a lot of people actually find using the phone terrifying. But yeah, being a frontline legal service. And fake it till you make it is what I say as well. Like so interesting seeing people on their first shift and they're absolutely terrified. It's like, you know, rip the Band-Aid off, have the phone call. You're not going to break them. You're not going to make anyone's problems worse. Like just as long as you don't make people's problems worse, then, you know, it's such a great learning experience from there. And it's also a really great confidence builder as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that sense of training and supervision. So when there's if anything goes wrong, I mean, and this is what we say in the clinical programs here at UTS, you know, the buck doesn't stop with you as a student. So that kind of empowers you to learn and get to a point where you feel incredibly confident to do all of the things that Katie mentioned, including speaking on the phone, which I think must be quite a foreign thing for most of you. Yeah, any other comments from the panel? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would just say curiosity, I think, is key. So there's nothing better than having a volunteer or intern come to us, and clearly they're there to learn, asking lots of questions, and there's a willingness to just roll up your sleeves and get stuck in. And also in line with what Katie said, just that just backing yourself. So I mean, when I started my law degree, I did not have a clue about the profession, the sector. I really didn't know very much at all. But I think just that willingness to just ask lots of questions and learn, even if you feel like you really don't know very much at all and you're lacking in confidence, is really critical.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a question up the back there, and any other questions that I can take at the same time? Okay, up the front. So first up the back, yeah.
I'm Mia. I just wanted to ask if there was opportunity within your work to work alongside governments or contribute to law reform or develop policy, because I know that I think working on an individual basis to achieve justice can sometimes be quite jading. Someone who works in a social justice space, so I was just wondering if that's something that you guys do.
Question. And up the front here.
My name's Sophia. I'm first year law and communications. This question is probably more directed to Gabriella. And in terms of your experience internationally, and I can imagine you might have been dabbling a little bit in diplomacy work from what I understand. Did you find that that was fulfilling that social justice desire? Because that's something that I'm potentially thinking about future path. Yeah.
So that? Yeah. Go ahead, Gabriella, and then we'll come back to the other question.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so yes, I would say it did. I think if you're operating in that world, in that diplomatic world, or something that involves, I suppose, working for a government, representing your country in a particular context, then you're inevitably going to be focused in some way on social justice matters, international development matters, which of course touches on human rights as well. So absolutely, I would say yes, that's another route that you could take if you have that strong desire to move in that direction.
Thank you. And then Mia's question about law reform opportunities and the idea of working alongside government and more structural approaches to social justice and change. Yeah. Do you want to?
I'm so happy to, Mia. It was like I planted you there. I love law reform, and it's really challenging actually contributing to law reform discussions in a frontline environment. So we have to balance the clients, but we're also, when we have the resources to do it, we're the best at it because we've got all of the stories. So a lot of those wonderful organisations that just do policy and advocacy don't necessarily have the client stories. So we really love to contribute to it. And do when we can. And most of our first drafts of our law reform pieces, as different inquiries come up, are drafted either by our front desk volunteers or it's stuff we tend to do more at the PLT stage, contribute to law reform discussions. But by way of example, I'm so glad we did it. Everybody laughed about it when it first came out. But there's a New South Wales parliamentary inquiry into public toilets happening at the moment. And we did a submission that talked about mostly better design for gender neutral people and gender neutral toilets and more inclusive toilets for trans and gender diverse folks, but also a little bit on access to toilets for homeless folks, because we're also the inner city catchment. So a little bit particularly about access to public toilets. also for people in gig economy workers, people experiencing homelessness. So our submission was all about all of those things. No idea how to design this kind of toilet, but that's the problem for the government. And really exciting, there's going to be public hearings coming up and we're going to be speaking at the public hearing. So that's just one example of something that we're doing at the moment. And it's really important for us to be contributing to those bigger conversations to actually change laws and policies. So yeah, it's a really big part of what we do.
Thanks, Katie. Other panelists?
We don't take a specialisation in law reform, but that's not to say that we definitely don't do advocacy work on the side. Last year, we were invited to the Isolated Children's Parents Association conference, and we spoke at New South Wales Parliament House alongside Deputy Premier Purikar, talking about the value of funding public schools and especially working with different organisations to try and lobby the government to make substantive change in this area. There is certainly the opportunity to join that aspect of our team. We do a lot of teamwork together to be able to create this kind of change. If individual work is something that you don't find super enjoyable when it comes to achieving justice, something else that we also do on the partnership side at the moment is we have built a scholarships resource that's been written by highly successful scholarship applicants, and that is like a 40-page document. It's the first of its kind in Australia. And we actually are working with organisations in Afghanistan and Gaza to try and get this resource to different students all around the world to be able to help them apply for scholarship funding and move to Australia and escape violence. So we do a lot of advocacy work in this space, both internationally and also domestically. But at our core, unfortunately, we are a service program, so we don't take specialisation in law reform.
Yeah, go ahead, Gabriella.
Yeah, sure. So at the centre, we do less direct law reform and advocacy work, unless the work is relating to a client group or a practice area that we know lots of pro bono work is undertaken for. The sort of advocacy that we do at the centre is more about building and maintaining the conditions within the profession to support lawyers to be doing pro bono work. So just slightly different context.
Other questions from the audience? Yeah, in front of you.
My name's Bella. I'm a third year law and communication student. I was just wondering how you kind of stay motivated and positive about being, a social justice focused lawyer when I feel like a lot of the industry is very much pushing that kind of commercial side of things. How do you balance those two interests, or if you have any kind of general advice in that sense?
Great question, Bella. Now it's like I planted you. Yeah, because part of this is about trying to balance all of that focus on a commercial and corporate pathway, which will be absolutely some students' choice, but thinking about how that works within it is another question, and a really good one. Yeah.
Should I
go?
Yeah. Okay.
Jump in. Yep.
So this is a really, really good question. So as I was saying earlier, it is really possible to pursue a commercial route but still be involved in social justice work. And so there's sort of three main approaches, you might say. So firstly, you can always volunteer at any time in a personal capacity. And of course, there are opportunities while you're a student, but equally when you become qualified, you could go to one of the community legal centres or another community organisation to be involved in pro bono work in your own time. But also there is increasingly opportunities to join, say, a commercial law firm and be involved in pro bono work for that law firm. And as I mentioned, the sector in Australia is enormous. Just in the last year alone, there were over 700,000 hours of pro bono support provided by lawyers, mostly in law firms, some in barristers' chambers, some in-house lawyers as well, but mostly in law firms, which is fabulous, and across a wide range of practice areas as well. So that's another route. And also what we're seeing is that there are more and more dedicated pro bono lawyers that are being appointed within law firms across the country to manage their practices. And that allows you to have full social justice focus, but still work in a commercial context. So there are about 150 dedicated pro bono lawyers now across the country, and 30 of them are partners in big law firms. Some law firms, such as Clayton Utz and Gilbert and Tobin, Watton and Carney, have 2 pro bono partners. And every year we just seem to see more and more and more dedicated pro bono lawyers appointed. So it is hard to get those roles. Obviously, they're currently few and far between, but we are predicting that more and more lawyers will be appointed with that focus. To get those roles, you often have to start with a commercial focus and be known within the law firms themselves. But it is possible to pursue that route within a commercial context. So yeah, to answer your question, you can balance it. It is possible.
One of those Wotton and Carney pro bono, full-time pro bono partners has a great partnership with the faculty too, which is something you guys can investigate through the internship program or ask me if you're interested in that. Gabriella?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd add to that. I think it comes somewhat from within. I think you sort of know what you want to do when you grow up, even though I'm still doing that, obviously. But yeah, I think people that want to work for the Aboriginal Legal Service know that they want to do that, I think, like I said earlier, I had this idea that I was going to maybe shift into one of those kind of pro bono roles in a commercial context, but actually culturally, that's just not really the kind of place I want to work. Like, I like swearing too much and things like that, and less rigid work culture. So I think it does depend on the kind of place that you want to work in. But yeah, one thing that I know, because we have so many wonderful pro bono partnerships where secondees come as part of, and it's one of the reasons we're really lucky actually being based in King's Cross. It's really easy for our pro bono partners to come and work with us. And they find that those days are such a relief for them and such an excellent change of scene, pace, context from what they do in their day job. And confidentially, we've got one, and we actually have to sign all of these agreements with our pro bono partners that we're not going to poach our commercial staff. So some people come and have such a great experience. They're like, actually, happy to take the pay cut. This is what I want to do full time. And so we actually have to not poach our pro bono partners, and people need to come at it their own way. Yeah, we've got someone she's with us today, and she's taking care of our duty room at the Downing Centre Local Court, where we provide the only LGBTQ domestic violence safe room in all of New South Wales. So she's manning that room this morning, and then she's going to come and do some work with me this afternoon when I go back in. And her story is actually, she's got at the moment 10 billable hours per day in her day job, which is probably not super healthy. Like, she works 10 billable hours, which means she actually works something like 12 hours a day. But she comes to us and she just does, her billables are just for her day with us. And so she's like, culturally again going, oh, actually maybe something different for me. But yeah, you find your way, and you know the kind of place that you want to work in, I think.
Right. And that sense from the panelists, I guess, about the windy parts of their careers, that they didn't start in a place that they ended up. And I love that part of your story, Gabriella, where it's like you get an experience and you realise that might be what you want to do, and you don't have to figure that out at this particular moment. I think it's really important. I actually had a question for our volunteer panelists, just thinking about how volunteering and the experiences that you've had have affected, I guess, your approaches of your careers, or how you think about your law degree, and where you might think you end up. If it's had an impact, it might be too early to think about those things, but if you had reflections about that.
Well, throughout my first year and a half of uni, I supported myself through various hospitality jobs and tutoring as well. But I was very lucky to actually get the opportunity to start working at the federal court as a legal case manager. And I thinking on that role not only has the skills and the experience that I had at ITE helped me in that interview, it helped me get that role, but also being within the court system now and taking on more of a case management role, I have a greater appreciation, I guess, for the process of case management itself, and for ensuring that, I guess, what goes to the courts and the experience that people have, especially our litigants in person, that they also have access to, safe, just and cheap, access to justice. Currently, the registrars that I'm assisting are working to really revolutionise the litigant in person space and to support that litigants, which is, I guess, the more official name for self-represented litigants, receive in the courts, in the federal court jurisdiction specifically, And I also have the opportunity to work with pro bono, so within the court. So if a judge happens to refer a self-represented litigant to get some pro bono assistance, sort of liaising with the Bar Association there, and trying to find representation for them, which is not always easy. Those barristers are also often having to volunteer for some quite out there cases, but yes, definitely being able to see, I guess, not just be pigeonholed into one area of law, but just experience a wide range of what the legal system and the court especially has to offer is very valuable.
For me, I found that volunteering actually helped me understand different types of social justice that are available to us. It's not when I first started out, I didn't really know what I was gonna do. I think I mentioned this earlier, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My IT degree was actually a backup in case I realized that the law degree was not working out for me. I was too weak in it. And I think volunteering at the center actually helped me realize that I'm able to combine my skills to help people. And I think that's something that a lot of people with double degrees should also consider, how your other degree can actually help your current degree and what you can do within it. So during the center, I helped with a bunch of research and I actually found that very interesting and I really liked it. So I actually did a lot of competitions because of the work that I did at the Pro Bono Center. And it actually really helped me understand that I really liked academia. I really like researching topics about like AI and law and how that actually impacts social justice. And I got successful in some of the competitions. I won some of them. Thank you. But but I think it was so eye-opening because I just thought social justice was just like you visit people's homes and then you talk to them. But then there's a lot more beyond that. It's about advocacy. It's about like pro bono. It's about having those practices and actually embedding those practices in your daily work, which I feel like has a wider outreach as well. Like it impacts a lot more people than just going to people's houses and just being like, do you guys need help? So that's what I thought. I was very sheltered when I first went into law, but I feel like volunteering really helped me understand the implications of social justice.
Thanks, Yash. We are getting close to time. I feel like there has been so many kind of amazing themes and a lot of inspiration from the panel. Huge question about, I mean, because of relevant to all of us here, equity of access to education and entering the legal profession and what kind of responsibilities come with that once you're at law school and you start making decisions about how to use your education and your role as lawyers once you graduate, and for those of you who become admitted and start practicing the ways in which you can continue kind of be true to your principles, your politics, things that are important to you in a kind of diverse settings and without necessarily taking one path towards the things that might be important to you. I just wanted to see if the panel had any last reflections, or absolutely don't have to have a last reflection, but is there anything you wanted to say that we didn't get to before I hand over to Chloe to give our vote of thanks and wrap us up?
I have a few flyers that to leave on the side. And so that has details through to social justice opportunities, which Yash also mentioned, and also the Australian Pro Bono Centre website, but also the Global Pro Bono Hub, which also has a jobs board looking at pro bono opportunities all over the world as well. So yeah, I'll just leave those on the side.
National pro bono opportunities, that sounds pretty good. Anything else from any of the other panelists?
Similar plug, please follow the Inner City Legal Centre on Instagram to find out what we're up to. Or if LinkedIn is your poison, we are also on that.
Great, thanks, Katie.
Yeah, and we'll leave some business cards as well over the side. So, and also please feel free to come and chat to Ruby Right. Send in volunteering at our organisation.
Amazing. And Chloe, I'll invite you. Yeah. Panel.
I'm just going to stand on the side here. On behalf of the UTS Faculty of Law and also the Law Student Society, I just would like to express a massive thank you to all of our panelists, Gabriella, Phoebe, Katie, Yashvanti, and Ruby, for generously taking time to share your expertise and advice into both social justice, lawyering, and volunteering generally, and how we as law students can get involved now, but also what opportunities we have moving forward. I think we've all been quite fortunate to hear your insights, and I speak on behalf of all attendees when I say it has been enlightening to see how we can advocate for meaningful change in the future, but also right now. And so thank you for what you all have done in spearheading some of these changes in your various organizations and roles, as well as sharing your knowledge. We do have a small token of appreciation to thank our panelists for their invaluable insights. If someone is willing to help me pass these down. Thank you. Thank you. Whilst Crystal is doing that, I also would like to thank Anthea, Crystal, Sivan, Mayan, and all the other student volunteers who have helped with the putting together and the administration of today's presentation. Through our attendees, your participation is invaluable. We appreciate it in running today's session. And so I'd just like to remind you that your 5 RJ points for attending will be automatically accrued, and we encourage all of you here to engage with this topic, engage with our panelists in the networking section, and you are able to do additional reflections by submitting a 350-word reflection on today's event if you'd like to earn further RJ points. Lastly, keep an eye out for upcoming events. So we have our second Brennan talk, which is on climate change, habitat and homelessness, to do with the Koalas documentary on the 3rd of April. We would love to see you there. We also have a few spots available in the 4th Brennan Yarning Circle if you're interested in that. And sign-ups are open for the discussion groups. If you have questions of any of those events, feel free to come to myself, Anthea, or Crystal. I'd like to now invite you all to enjoy some refreshments, and thank you again for attending and to all of our panelists.